Hey, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to my channel for another rebuttal. If you're new, welcome. I appreciate it. For my subscribers, welcome back. If you are new, thanks for checking me out and giving me a chance. So, anyway, if you like this kind of content, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to me? I'm sure you won't be disappointed. And why don't you go ahead and check out the other videos I've already uploaded. Speaking of getting on with the video, grab your popcorn and your facepalm gear, get comfortable, and let's go.
Hello once again. I'm chemist John Pendleton, and this is our 16th conference in a series about creation, evolution, dinosaurs, the Bible. Today we're going to talk about races. Where did Cain get his wife? When were the angels created? What can we learn from all the things that we've been looking at these and other conferences? First of all is the issue of Cain's wife. It says in Genesis chapter 4 that Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and went to another place, and he knew his wife. Somebody came up to me at a conference recently and said, where did he find his wife over there? I says, well, in the Bible, the word that a man knew his wife doesn't mean that he met her for the first time. It's just a discreet way of saying that he had sexual relations with her. Now, the thing is, he already had his wife with him, but when he had relations, then there was a child born to them. Now, here's the thing is, where did that woman come from? And guess what? We're going to go to the Bible to get some answers. The Bible does have answers, and we're going to go to Genesis for the answers.
Oh, goody, we're going to talk about Cain and where he got his wife. My guess is you're going to say he married his sibling, but the Bible doesn't say that. In fact, the Bible makes it quite clear that there were other people living on earth besides Adam and Eve and their little family. In Genesis 4:14, Cain tells God that his punishment is too severe after God bans him from his presence because anybody who will find him will want to kill him. Now, why would Cain say that if the only people on earth were Adam, Eve, and their family? You know, John, for a biblical literalist, you sure do add to the Bible. Your God's going to get mad at you for that. Side issue here, uh, the Bible says that God cast Cain out from his presence. But if God is omnipresent, how can anybody be cast out from his presence? I don't know, just a little something for you to think about. You guys know you love me for bringing up this little kind of shit. You want me to believe that the Bible has answers? Well, John, I'll give you one thing. If the Bible has answers, it has really dumb answers or really wrong answers and some really bad advice along with it. You know, John, if you want us to believe that you're going to the Bible for answers, the least you can do is stick to what the Bible says instead of just making shit up. It makes you look like a liar.
In the case of Genesis chapter 4, we have the story of Cain and Abel. What the reason for that story is to show us, for one, how all of humanity is divided. Because we have Abel, who came to bring an offering to God, not thinking of what he would do, but looking for some intermediary to make himself acceptable before God. He brought an animal without blemish from the flock. Cain, on the other hand, represents all the rest of humanity who says, I'm going to come to God the way that I think is best. And he brought the best of the field, which was not accepted.
There you go again, making crap up. Man, God must be really mad with you. I mean, if he existed. Nowhere in Genesis 4 does it say that God says, Bring me a sacrifice, sheep or otherwise. Neither does it say anything about an intermediary this early in the book of Genesis. You have forced an interpretation onto the text that is not there. Shame on you, John. And I thought you were a biblical literalist. So much for that idea. So, according to the Bible, Cain was a farmer, so he naturally would have had access to fruit, and Abel was a shepherd, meaning he naturally would have had access to cattle, including sheep. Now, it seems to me like your God is just being an asshole here. Like, why does he prefer living things? It may sound like I'm being picky here, but why do I know the Bible better than you do? In fact, why do most atheists know the Bible better than Christians do? Could it be that if Christians actually read their Bible, they would become atheists? I don't know. Just a thought.
Now, where did that wife come from? Let's go back a chapter to Genesis chapter 3. In fact, the question is, who gave the name to man? Who gave the name to Adam? It was God. Who gave the name to the woman? Let's take a look at Genesis chapter 3 and verse 20, where it says, "And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living." There's a good start. And the thing is, too, Genesis chapter 4 is not part of the historical sequence exactly, because in Genesis chapter 5, it says that Adam begat sons and daughters. All the time, from the time that they were cast out of the garden, they began having children. And of course, Adam, even though he had sinned, still lived to be 930 years old. Not too bad for having sinned and dying.
John, do you know what Adam means in Hebrew? It means of the earth. So even if this story was true, which it's not, that doesn't bode very well for your God. Now, does it? He's not very imaginative. And just as an aside here, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. Why do people always picture Adam and Eve as white? In all actuality, if they even existed, they were probably black. As for Eve, this is yet another contradiction in the Bible because I've already pointed out that the Bible actually says there were other people living in the world. So explain that one, John. Scientists have calculated that at most, men and women can live about 120 years, give or take. That's on the outside. No one can live over 900 years. That's just ridiculous.
Why was that? Because before the flood, this water canopy prevented harmful radiation, which would cause more mutations. After the flood, we see that man didn't live those 900 some years like he did before, but some 2, 3, 400 years. There was a degeneration, lower longevity than before, and there were becoming more mutations. So that by the time that God gave the law to Israel in the wilderness, that was about 2,500 years from, or 2,700 years from the time of the creation. Now there were so many mutations that if a man married a sister, they would both have about the same mutations, but they become aggravated or exaggerated in their children. And so God wanted to prevent.
Most radiation we get from the sun is in the form of UV light, and although this can damage DNA unless you tan for hours on end every day, most of it can be repaired with an enzyme called phytolase. Some people are deficient in phytolase and they have to be very careful out in the sun. Um, but generally, phytolase can repair the damage caused by UV light. Also, this imaginary water canopy that you insist on would not help in the least because everything would have baked to death immediately from the greenhouse effect. So, no, that wouldn't have helped. As stated before, nobody can live to over 900 years, John. Tell me, why is it that as far as we've been keeping medical records, the average age has gone up? For as long as living things have been on the face of the earth, which has been about 4.54 billion years, there have always been mutations. That's why things are different. I mean, really. Now, I know that it's hard for you to use your brain and think, John, but you should try it sometime. It's really not all that hard. So dust off those cobwebs and get to thinking. I'm sure you can find several things wrong with your young earth.
And so God wanted to prevent that. We see this in the case of the English kings in the Middle Ages, that the prince married the princess. The idea was to conserve the, the royal blood, but their offspring were just biologically some of the worst people around because they were violating God's principle and because of the degeneration that had occurred that was happening in that way. Now, so wife to Cain was one of his sisters. And of course you want to get the little booklet. Where did Cain get his wife?
Ay, 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 ay. John, you don't know history? Oh, of course you don't. Why would you? Okay, quick history lesson. This is King Charles V of Spain. And guess what? He's inbred. You see, John, it wasn't just English kings who were inbred. It was all European monarchs to keep it in the family, so to speak. And by the Middle Ages, they were not marrying their sisters. You're thinking about the Egyptians. And this is one of the Habsburgs. You know, John, I really, really wish that you would put just a tiny bit of effort into getting your information right because, spreading misinformation, it's just not cool, man. Oh, and before I get comments on this, it probably wasn't just ancient Egypt that was doing this. It was probably a lot of ancient monarchies. And it doesn't take a god to see that this has devastating effects on the offspring of inbred couples. It just takes people with common sense. No god needed.
Now, the next question is, how many races are there in the world today? Actually, there's only one. Now, where did this all come from? How did this all happen? What happened goes back to the Tower of Babel. God had told, after the flood, God told them to disperse over the earth, and people stayed together. And as we bring out in our 19th and 20th talks about how ancient primitive man was equal to or more intelligent than people today, one of the things was they were all of one language. God had already tried judging the earth with a flood, and in a matter of a few hundred years, it appears that they were being disobedient again. And so this time he confused their tongues. And it was God who picked what language each person would speak. And also having in view that if this person, for example, spoke English, they're going to get together with everybody who speaks English. If this one speaks Spanish, those will get together with the one that speaks Spanish. If this one speaks Zimbabwe or whatever, they're going to get together. One that speaks Chinese, you speak Hindu, whatever. They're going to get together.
The good old Tower of Babel story. Well, let's talk about this story for a bit first, and then I will give you the real scientific explanation of where languages came from. Are you listening, John? You just might learn something for a change. It's a bit hard to hypothesize on what the Tower of Babel was supposed to be, if it was supposed to be anything at all except a story. It could have been a pyramid or it could have been a ziggurat, which were made in that part of the world at that time. According to the story, after the flood that never happened, people decided they needed to make a name for themselves, so they decided to build a structure up to heaven, and God got mad like he usually does because, and let's face it, he can't use his words, and decided that he was going to come down and make different people speak different languages so they couldn't understand each other. The real cause of language is actually more complex, as it always is. I know, shocker. But actually, language is a byproduct of our brains, much like religion is. And we still see languages evolving today, and they always will be evolving. A recent study found a correlation between languages and the environments in which they originated. This is a list of some of the factors that the researchers took into consideration in compiling their list. As you can see, environment is only one factor in many. This is the site I got the information from. You can copy paste it into Google if you want to read more about this study. In short, John, mythologies are going to try to explain things the best they can because that's what mythologies do until we can come up with a better explanation.
We have a language group of 100 people. They all speak the same language because we got to stick together. Let's say we have 90 people with dark skin, 10 people with light skin. Now we're only going to interchange our sons and daughters amongst us because we're the only ones that understand that language. We don't have any language school to go to. What will happen in a few generations? The darker skin is going to dominate amongst all of us. And because we have the same kind of skin color, we speak the same language, we stick together so we develop our own culture, kind of foods that we like, recipes our wives interchange with one another. We live in a certain area, develop certain crops and certain ways of doing business. We develop a culture, and eventually it grows big enough and we become a nation. And unfortunately, that's what's called a race. It shouldn't be called that because there's only one race, which is the human race.
It's not even wrong.
Oh joy, another bottleneck, but that's not even the main problem with this argument, John. I checked. This is about 2 generations after the flood, and you said a generation is about 150 years. That makes this 300 years after the flood. You also gave an arbitrary doubling rate of the population of about 150 years. That means that if this took place 2 generations after the flood, there weren't even 100 people on the face of the earth. And exactly how did you get from language group to skin color? That doesn't make any sense, John. Do you even listen to yourself? In language school, I assure you that people had the wherewithal to learn how to communicate with each other before there was any quote unquote language school. How do you think reality works? I know this is going to shock you, John. So you might want to listen very carefully to this. Race, culture, and language are not even synonymous. Where did you get that? Not to mention the fact that that isn't even the origin of skin color, because we came out of Africa, John. All of us were dark skinned at one point or another. And by all of us, I mean our ancestors, not the individuals today. Now, as we came out of Africa and into the northern climes, people there became lighter skinned. This was due mainly to the fact that people in northern climes needed to absorb more vitamin D through their skin than people in the southern climes. John, would you please read a book? Shout out to these lovely people who allow me to do what it is that I do in calling out this crap. If you would like to join, you can join for as little as 99 cents a month. All you have to do is click the join button at the bottom of the screen. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and leave a comment in the comment section. I read all of your comments, and it also helps the algorithm. So, in leaving a comment, you will also help me. Thank you very much. Please check out the rest of my available content. And until later, have a great day, and I will see you when I see you. So, toodaloo.